Good day, Deep in Word family. Welcome to day 157 of our Bible study review. Today we're going through chapters 10 through 12 of the book of Ezekiel. Now, before we walk into chapter 10, let's remember where we left off yesterday. Ezekiel had this vision of all of the abominations being done in the temple, and then there was this vision of this man with a kind of like a briefcase, and then the voice of Yah told this man with the briefcase, which is really like an angelic being, to seal the righteous ones with a seal on their forehead and to destroy everyone else. All right. So we see that the land is being judged for all of the wickedness. And now as we walk into chapter 10, we're going to see something else. We're going to start to see the glory that is Yahuah. We're going to see his glory start to lift up from the temple, and we're going to see eventually that his glory, his presence among his people actually leaves Jerusalem. So let's start reading from verse 1 and see how this plays out. It says, "Then I looked, and in the expanse that was above the heads of the cherubim, there appeared over them as it were a sapphire stone." So Ezekiel is seeing the vision back in chapter 1. He's seeing this again. And so it says, "as the appearance of the likeness of a throne. And he spoke to the man clothed with linen and said, Go in between the wheels under the cherubim and fill your hands with the coals of fire from among the cherubim and scatter them over the city." And he entered in my sight. So the man with the briefcase that we saw in yesterday's reading, right? This is the same one, clothed in white linen, and he is to go between the cherubim and take the burning fire of coals and spread it over the city. And we know that Nebuchadnezzar is actually going to set the city on fire. That is how he is going to ultimately, destroy the temple. So before this happens, the presence of Yah actually leaves the place. So I just want to explain how it happens in the spirit and then how it's going to take place in the natural. And we need to understand that that is a truth of the here and now. Nothing happens in the natural unless it is done first in the spirit. All right. But let's keep reading from verse 3. It says, "Now the cherubim stood on the right side of the temple when the man went in, and a cloud filled the inner court. Then the glory of Yahuah went up from the cherub and stood over the threshold of the temple. And the house was filled with the cloud, and the court was full of the brightness of the glory of Yahuah. The sound of the wings of the cherubim was heard, even in the outer court, like the voice of the Almighty Elohim when he speaks." Right? So some of the same imagery that we have seen in chapter 1 of Ezekiel, and how the wings of the cherubim, when they flap, it sounds like the voice of the Almighty speaking. And we know that the spirit of Yah is actually in these angelic beings, and the spirit of the wheels is in the cherubim as well, right? It's all connected. And this is a picture to show us that those who truly follow Yah, his spirit is within us. And when he tells us to stop, we stop. And when he tells us to go, we go. We listen, right? We yield to the voice of his spirit. We are to be one with him. So the angelic being with the white linen clothing and with the briefcase, he does exactly what Yahuah tells him to do. He then takes this fiery coal from the cherubim, who hands it to him, right? And Ezekiel starts to see some of the same imagery that he saw back in chapter 1. He sees the throne. He sees like sapphire. He sees, the likeness of a man sitting upon the throne, right? He sees the Almighty Elohim sitting upon the throne. All right. And so let's go down to verse 15. It says, "Then the cherubim rose up. They are the living creatures that I saw by the river Kebar. When the cherubim went, the wheels went with them. And when the cherubim lifted up their wings to mount up from the earth, the same wheels also would not turn from beside them. When the cherubim stood, the wheels stood. And when they rose up, the wheels also rose up, for the spirit of the living creatures was in them." And then it says in verse 18, "Then the glory of Yahuah departed from off of the threshold of the temple and stood over the cherubim. The cherubim lifted their wings and mounted up from the earth in my sight. And when they went out, the wheels were beside them. They stood at the door of the east gate of the house of Yahuah, and the glory of the Elohim of Israel was above them." So we see that his presence is about to depart from the temple. Now we walk into chapter 11, and the beginning of chapter 11 is about judging the wicked counselors over Jerusalem, right? The priest, the prince, who is the king, right? And all of the prophets, all of those who are falsely leading the sheep astray. So let's start reading from verse 1. It says, "And the Spirit lifted me up and brought me to the east gate of the house of Yahuah, which faces east. And see, at the door of the gate were 25 men, among whom I saw Yaazaniah, the son of Azor, and Pelatyahu, son of Benayahu." These names, y'all, oh my goodness. "Heads of the people." Verse 2, "And he said to me, Son of man, these are the men who plot wickedness and give evil counsel to the city," right? To the citizens, it says, "who are saying, it is not near. Let us build houses. This is the cooking pot, and we are the meat. Therefore prophesy against them. Prophesy, O son of man." And the Spirit of Yahuah fell upon me and said to me, "Speak. Thus says Yahuah. Thus you have said, O house of Israel, for I know what comes up in your spirit. You have increased your slain in this city and filled its streets with the slain. Therefore, thus says the Adon, Yahuah, your slain whom you have laid in its midst, they are the meat. And this city is the cooking pot, but I shall bring you out of the midst of it." Verse 8, "You have feared the sword, and I bring a sword upon you, declares the Adon Yahuah. And I will bring you out of its midst and give you into the hands of strangers and execute judgments on you. By the sword you will fall. At the border of Israel I will judge you." And so the wicked counselors were saying that the city was the cooking pot and they are the meat, right? The city is protecting them. And he says, no, I will bring you outside of the city. Actually, the slain who you have slain are the meat, and the city is the cooking pot. He's turning around this false advice, right? And he's turning it around to show them that it is a judgment. It is not a protection. Okay, so the city walls will actually become their judgment. And he says, I will take you outside of the walls to show you that these walls are not protection for you, and I'll judge you outside of the walls. And Yahuah goes on to further declare this truth. In verse 11, he says, "This is not your cooking pot." He's talking about the walls of Jerusalem. And he says, "Nor are you the meat in its midst. At the border of Israel, I will judge you." In verse 12, Yahuah says, "And you will know that I am Yahuah, for you have not," right? "You have not executed my right rulings and my judgments." He goes, "You have actually followed after the ways of the pagans all around you. You follow them. You don't follow me." Verse 13, he says, "And it came to be while I was prophesying that Pelatyahu, the son of Benaiah, died. And I fell on my face and cried out with a loud voice and said, O Adonai Yahuah, are you making an end of the remnant of Israel?" Then the word of Yahuah came to me, saying, "Son of man, your brothers, your relatives, your kinsmen, and all of the house of Israel, all of it, are those about whom the inhabitants of Jerusalem said, 'Keep far from Yahuah. This land has been given to us as a possession.'" So they're saying this land is ours, but keep far from the God who gave it to us. Ridiculousness. Verse 16, "Therefore say, thus says the Adon Yahuah, although I have sent them far off among the Gentiles, and although I have scattered them among the lands, yet I was for them a mikdash, which is a sanctuary, for a little while in the lands to which they came. Therefore say, thus says the Adon Yahuah, I shall gather you from the peoples, and I shall assemble you from the lands where you have been scattered, and I shall give you the land of Israel." He's saying, I'm going to take you up and I'm going to move you out, but I'm also going to bring you back. Verse 18, let's read. He says, "And they shall go there, and they shall take away all of its filthiness and all of its abominations from there. And I shall give them one heart and put a new spirit within you. And I shall take the stony heart out of their flesh and give them a heart of flesh, so that they walk in my laws and guard my right rulings, and they shall do them. And they shall be my people, and I shall be their Elohim. But those whose hearts walk after the heart of their filthiness and their abominations, I shall recompense their deeds on their own heads, declares the Adon Yahuah." And right before chapter 11 ends, we see that the Spirit of Yahuah leaves It leaves Jerusalem. It leaves the temple. All right, so let's read. It says, and the cherubim lifted up their wings with the wheels beside them, and the esteem of the Elohim of Israel was high above them. And the esteem of Yahuah went up from the midst of the city and stood upon the mountain, which is on the east side of the city. And the Spirit lifted me up and brought me in a vision by the Spirit of Elohim into Chaldea, to the exile. And he says right there, and the vision that I had seen went up from me. So the vision was gone. And it says after that, he told those in the Babylonian exile all that he had seen. As we walk into chapter 12, it is important to note that Ezekiel, he's one of the only true prophets in the Babylonian exile right now, because you have false prophets who are prophesying that their exile is soon to be done and they're going to return back to Jerusalem. And we're going to see that that is not true. Ezekiel is going to show and tell them that there are further judgments coming to those who are still in Jerusalem. So let's open up with chapter 12 and see how he's going to act out some more judgments. Let's start reading from verse 1. It says, and the word of Yahuah came to me, saying, Son of man, you are dwelling in the midst of a rebellious house. They have eyes to see, but they have not seen, and they have ears to hear, but they have not heard, for they are a rebellious house. Therefore, son of man, prepare your baggage for exile, and go into exile by day before their eyes, and you shall go from your place into exile to another place before their eyes. It could be that they see, though they are a rebellious house. And you shall bring out your baggage for exile before their eyes by day, and at evening go before their eyes like those who go into exile. Dig through the wall before their eyes, and you shall carry out through it. And so he is to act out another judgment, right, to the ones who are in the Babylonian exile. It's to serve as a reminder to what has already happened to them who are there, and it's serving to show what will happen to those who are still fighting to remain in the land. Let's continue reading. In verse 6, it says, take them on your shoulders and bring them out at dark before their eyes. Cover your face so that you do not see the land, for I have made you a sign to the house of Israel. As so I did, as I was commanded. I brought out my baggage for exile by day, and at evening I dug through the wall with my hand. I brought them out at dark, and I took them on my shoulder before their eyes. And in the morning the word of Yahuah came to me, saying, Son of man, did not the house of Israel, the rebellious house, say to you, what are you doing? Say to them, thus says the Adon Yahuah, this message is to the prince in Jerusalem and all the house of Israel who are in their midst. And he says, say, I am assigned to you, as I have done, so it is done to them. They are going into exile, into captivity. Verse 12, and the prince who is in their midst is to bear his baggage on his shoulder at dark and go out. They are to dig through the wall, to bring them out through it. He is to cover his face so that he does not see the land with his eyes. Now this is talking about Zedekiah. Now if you remember what happens to King Zedekiah, he tries to escape from the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, right? He tries to escape at night secretively, and he gets caught. And what does Nebuchadnezzar do to him? He gouges out his eyes so that he cannot see. Let's keep reading in verse 13. And I shall spread my net over him, and he shall be caught in my snare, and I shall bring him to Babylon, the land of the Chaldeans, but he shall not see it, and yet die there. So yes, Zedekiah, he dies in the Babylonian exile. He says, and I shall scatter to every wind all who are around him to help him and all his bands, and I shall draw out the sword after them. All of those who were with King Zedekiah while he was trying to escape, all of them were killed. And then Yahuah declares, and then they will know that I am Yahuah, right? All of the captives that are there, and Ezekiel is acting this out and telling them what it means. They will know that Yahuah is true and that Ezekiel is a true prophet when they see these things come to pass. When they see King Zedekiah being brought and his eyes are gouged out and that no one is with him and that King Zedekiah dies in Babylon, they're going to know that Yah is true. All right. And then he also tells Ezekiel to eat his bread and drink his water with trembling. And this is to serve as a sign to those in Jerusalem that they shall also tear off their bread and eat it piece by piece with trembling, because they don't know where their next meal is coming from. Ezekiel is called to act this out in front of those who are in Babylon right now. And then Yahuah declares to those who are in Jerusalem, who says that all of these words of prophecy, they're afar off. They're not in our days. We don't have to worry about it. He says he will stop that from being a proverb in the land. And he says, the words that I speak, I will perform them, and I will perform them now. You will no longer use that as a proverb, right? And this is a word for us in the here and now. For those who say, oh, the judgment isn't coming, Messiah isn't coming, those judgments, they are far off. We need to open up our eyes and see that the time of the end is near. We're not just in the last days, but we are in the last hour. If you have not taken a spiritual temperature on the world and have seen the fact that there is a priesthood that is making themselves ready in the land of Jerusalem, right? They have brought the red heifers to burn the ashes to prepare for this third temple being built. If y'all don't understand these words of prophecy, just like they were in the very beginning, right here in the book of Ezekiel, Revelation is unfolding before our eyes right now. This is a video that you want to send to your friends and family. This is the truth that you want to speak and reveal to those whom you love. Tell them to repent, because repenting is necessary to receive the truth of the kingdom. You cannot yoke up with our Messiah without repenting of your sins. You cannot willfully continue to walk in your sins and walk into the kingdom. He will say, depart from me, I do not know you. And you will take your part in the lake of fire with those who are rebellious. Please, please, please take your lessons from this book right here, because what happened before will happen again. Deep and Word family, that's all that I have for you today. Until tomorrow, Yah bless.